Murata on a live stream said what he thinks the ending would be. He says something along the lines of,
with the introduction of the monster god in the One Punch Man manga, which differentiates from the one webcomic, there's a very real chance that Saitama in the next chapter will battle the monster god. Joining me today is Shonen, another YouTuber that covers One Punch Man, and we're going to talk about the possibilities of Saitama vs. God coming up very soon, right here in the manga. That's coming up right after this message from our sponsor. Badass champions? Check. Tough bosses? Check. Millions of players? Check. Oh, hey Death Knight. Nah, I can't take you on the raid, man. I'm taking Krisk, the Ageless. Well, he's an S rank and you're, well, a C rank. I mean, the bosses in Doom Tower are insanely tough. Raid Shadow Legends. Chibata! The infamous dungeon battle game is now available on both PC and your phone, now with over 500 awesome looking champions to collect and organize. Use my links below to download Raid yourself to your mobile phone or your PC while I tell you more. This month, Raid got their biggest update ever, the Doom Tower, filled with 120 floors, secret challenge rooms, and 12 seriously badass bosses to take on. All you have to do is hit the link in the description and get your free Void Champion XP booster, 50 gems, and some energy refills, and even an ancient shard as soon as you get in-game. And you'll get this awesome champion, the Bulwark, for free, and he'll be a huge help in Doom Tower. You'll find extra rewards here in your inbox for the next 30 days only. Please welcome Shonen.
hey, what's up, guys? Ready to talk about this One Punch Man god that everybody's so fascinated with, but fair warning, we don't really know much, so there's going to be a lot of speculation here.
Yes, in the latest chapter, we're introduced to God that was so unexpected. I mean, the final panel completely took everyone by surprise. And even leading up to this chapter, we saw extra images of God, like through Psychos' vision, that we weren't expecting as well. It's something that we saw pieces of in the webcomic, but Murata is really expanding on it here in his version of the One Punch Man manga. Why do you think that is, Shonen?
Well, it could be for two reasons, and I assume that the title of this video is Saitama going to fight God early or something like that, so I'll just go right into that. And it's like, there's two reasons. It's either he's going to fight him early, or they're just trying to set up the end game now so that it's not kind of just rushed at the end. I hope that it's the latter here, because that means we can have longevity for this series. Because in my opinion, God is the absolute end game of One Punch Man. Like, if he does happen to come out and there is a fight, I really don't see anything else happening after that, meaning that, like, you know, Shibawa's prophecy, the whole big thing that's set up, essentially the whole plot of the story outside of Saitama being the One Punch Man, revolves around God and what he represents. So him showing up here, I hope, is just building a nice foundation for what the rest of the series is going to be about.
So you think Murata is, you're hoping that he's just pumping us up. He's hyping us up right now, because we all know, if we read the one webcomic, how this arc is supposed to end, but he's giving us a taste of something to come in the distant future, which I think is great. But the problem is, what's going to keep Saitama down there in the mining shafts or whatever while all the fights are going on the surface? Because Saitama's not supposed to come until late. So the question is, if he's going to fight God here or have a little mini excursion with God, will that derail the series, and maybe Murata will end up taking his version of One Punch Man in an entirely different direction? What do you think about that?
Well, the thing is that the art is Murata's. Like, all of this art is for sure 100% his, but the story is still being told by one. And you bring up a good question, you know, how is Saitama going to stay down there? Because, you know, just like what I was saying, like, you know, how are we going to try to link this up with the original continuity of the webcomic? Because I do think it's most likely going to hit that point of where Saitama's going to show up late, you know, Goku style, you know, the very last minute when all hope is lost, and then he steps up to the plate and takes down the big bad. So how do we get to that point? And your guess is as good as mine.
Are you saying that it was one who created Orochi, or do you think Murata said, I want to introduce Orochi, and one like okayed it?
No, that Orochi is absolutely one's creation. You can actually see the original designs that one had for Orochi. He looks very different.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I figured it's something like Toriyama Toyotaro from Dragon Ball kind of relationship. I guess one's kind of giving bullet points or making designs and concepts, and I guess they work closely together to give the finished product.
Yeah, it is similar to Toyotaro and Toriyama, but just think of it like if Toriyama was way more hands-on than he is currently. Which unfortunately he's not. So we get, Toyotaro's product, but that's a story for another time. But one I would say is producing 95% of the story that we're following right now. It's just through the artistic lens of Murata.
One Reddit user posted that if you take the image of the planet that Psycho saw and you flip it, and you map it to God's head from the last page in the most recent chapter, it actually fits his head perfectly. Do you think it's possible that what Psycho saw was just like the top of his head, or like a piece of like an appendage or something?
It's very possible because we don't really understand completely what she saw. We know pretty much it was God. I mean, the pieces are there for you to draw that conclusion. But see, at that time, I thought that maybe she was looking at like what God's true form was, and that maybe he was like some kind of planet, like Ego from Marvel or something like that. Because, before we got into all this cube stuff, the prevailing theory, or at least mine, was that, God was some kind of sentient planet or something like that. But now it seems like, God is his tangible form is this dude in the fetal position.
Right, humanoid. Why do you think he's in the fetal position? I mean, that's showing us that he's imprisoned, which leads me to believe very easily that was Blast's doing, right?
Well, that would be incredible. But let me just answer the Psychos thing first. I'm looking at the panel now of God's head. When you do it like that, yeah, when you make it look how you want it to look, it definitely matches up. And I'm not discrediting it. I think it makes sense for sure, because that's, if this is his tangible form, then him appearing to be some kind of planet wouldn't make sense unless he is somehow, fused with the earth, like what Psychos was talking about, with the abilities that she had picked up. But this would be cool if she was just looking at his head.
Well, because
I'm actually on board with that. But like, if you don't crop in the picture here, it kind of doesn't look like that.
Okay, but look, see the tiny little hole in that image that Saitama and Flash.
No, I see it.
They're gonna be looking at the top of his head, right? And that's all they're gonna be seeing, which would be like basically exactly what Psycho saw. I mean,
no, you're absolutely right. It makes 100% sense. But I've naturally become a skeptic, longer. I've gone into this content creator game, so I have to look at it from a skeptic perspective, because like a lot of the times, like I jump on board with these wild theories and then I get a little out of control, and then people start like picking up with my momentum, and then things get a little crazy. So I'll say that this is plausible for sure. And from Saitama, Flashy Flash, and Monaco's perspective, they probably are only seeing something that would appear to be like a sphere or like something of a planet. I mean,
exactly.
We can't exactly see what they're looking at, but in the cover page of 138, it says, "What's this thing that's peeping at us?"
That's true.
So that also adds ambiguity to it.
True. Good point. It's so exciting. Like anything could happen in this next chapter, or at least a continuation. I mean, maybe in the next chapter, we don't even get to see what happens right here with Saitama and God, but anything could happen. This thing could like lift up and just stare at Saitama, and then the portal could close. Or maybe Saitama just punches him and it doesn't kill him, and then the portal closes, or maybe he comes out and fights right now. I mean, Like literally anything could happen from here on out. I think that's why it's so exciting, and fans are so pumped, man. Like everybody who read that chapter was just losing it. It was the best.
This
chapter
reinvigorated
ever.
this reinvigorated the community so much. This is definitely what we needed, because like I said also in my review, that we kind of got a little bit of fatigue from this arc, especially the last couple chapters. It was kind of dragging on.
Yeah.
But this definitely was like, okay, guys, hang in there with us. There's some cool things to come. But to answer your question about the Cuban blast, I don't want to leave that off the table. This could be what the inside of the cube itself looks like. Because like the way that he's in that fetal position, if you're inside of a cube or a box, you naturally would kind of be conformed to that position, right?
That's what, like, I think the most plausible explanation is that it's some sort of prison, and the cube is some sort of like key, or it has some sort of connection to keeping him inside the prison, right?
You could assume so, for sure. But then it leads to the questions of, okay, so how would a being of this magnitude of power even be prisoned in the first place? And then you think, okay, maybe Blast put him in there.
Right.
So then that leads us to, okay, so if Blast did put God in this cube, then Blast is maybe on par with Saitama, not like physical raw strength, but just overall power output. If he could do this to somebody like this, which means Blast is even stronger than even I thought. And, I'm like the hyper of Blast in this community. But I don't think that Blast put him in this cube, because one, that would make Blast too powerful. It means that Blast is essentially, he can take care of God. Number two, Blast would, I don't know, relay this information to the Hero Association or something. They would have some kind of preconceived knowledge of this. Third of all, which I'm sure you're aware of, that little Easter egg from the volume 23 table of contents, with the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
If that is like, I mean, it's not the literal Ark of the Covenant. A lot of the people in the community are kind of flying off the rails with that stuff. I mean, it's like, it's just this world's version of it. If that is truly the Ark of the Covenant, and we can take that little Easter egg as canon to the story, okay, that's another thing that we don't have confirmation on. We don't know if that's just kind of Murata having a little fun there with that, or if he is literally trying to tell a deep cut portion of the story with that. If it is the latter, then that means that dates back to thousands of years ago, potentially. Does that mean that Blast is thousands of years old as well? It kind of gets muddy at that point.
So let me point out two things. For one, on top of the Ark is the cube itself from the promo art, like almost like it's some sort of weight. It's sort of holding, sealing whatever inside from preventing it from getting out, right? Like this thing is like Pandora's box, and the cube is like the weight that's sitting on top, preventing it from ever opening onto the world, right? So that's kind of like some sort of symbolism that it is maybe like a key-esque. Also, remember all those chapters where Saitama and Flashy Flash are going through the mining carts, like all throughout the mine, and then like all the monsters are like making gold, like mining for gold and all this stuff like that, like deep down within the earth.
Yeah.
My first thought was like, going back, I was like, why is Murata spending so many chapters with this mining stuff? Like, who cares? And then like, I'm starting to think now, what if during their mining excavations they found this cube? So it's like, that would make sense that it's maybe been around since Egyptian times, or it's some sort of like ancient thing, or maybe it's embedded deep down within the earth. I mean, I think that there has to be multiple cubes, first of all. My theory is that, the cube that Blast has is probably not the same cube that Saitama just found deep within the Monster Association. Otherwise, that would mean that like Blast maybe went down there at some point, I guess, unless a monster stole it from him. But I think that one cube opened that tiny portal. And my theory is that Drive Knight is going to try and collect all of the cubes in order to like free God at the end of the series.
Drive Knight.
Yeah, man. I mean, he's the villain,
Oh, that would be interesting. I never thought about Drive Knight being interested in the cubes, but
he's interested in Orochi cells. He's collecting parts from Boros' spaceship. He's.
Well, I mean, that's just the thing, is that, that's the organization's goal. They just go through research and try to accumulate as much power as they can. But before we go into that whole, because there's already enough conspiracy theories with Drive,
Yeah.
First of all, the mining stuff. I drew that conclusion as well, and I think that it's correct. I think that the mining stuff was showing a few things. First of all, it was showing how the Monster Association was constructed, because it was originally just built off of the foundation of the Subterraneans, like the guys that Saitama fights in the first episode, both in his dream and in reality. And that's also how they met Elder Centipede. But also, I guess it supplied their source of revenue or something.
Yeah, that's what it said.
But also, this room of treasure here certainly supports that they found this Egyptian treasure or whatever it is from the excavation that they're doing.
Well, yeah, now, in the tower, they even have a mining cart full of gold, right? A couple of them. They're pointing to that scene, like, in particular, and it's deep down, at like around the bottom. He's showing us that like for a reason. I feel like, unless it's all coincidence, but I feel like it's too much to be a coincidence.
Usually with one's writing, things aren't really just like a coincidence. I mean, we could draw a lot of that from like other battle manga series, and it just happens, by happenstance. But One Punch Man 1, he usually does things deliberately, and I totally think that this is that case for sure. So, and also if you look at the the helmet, the Tutankhamun inspired thing, it has like one eye, similar to how like Giro was, or it just represents monsters in general. That could also be a clue as to like, maybe, I don't know, there was some kind of monster messiah, not a messiah, but like some kind of monster prophet or something back in the day or something like that. And maybe that even inspired Psychos to have the Giro aesthetic in the first place. But aside from that, what you're saying about the multiple cubes, that's very plausible as well, because first of all, that's just a trope in storytelling. Two of the biggest blockbusters have that element to them, Avengers and Justice League. But
right, yeah, and he loves Marvel, or Murata does anyway.
Absolutely does. And it also explains how Blast would get a cube himself, but it would also explain how the Monster Association would have one, or just seemingly found it through an excavation. Now, I thought that Blast, I don't know, maybe got that cube in that facility that he saved Tatsumaki from.
Right, yeah, that's the impression I got, that his real mission wasn't to save Tatsumaki, it was just to get the cube, and he kind of freed her on the way out.
Yeah, it was kind of just a little bonus there. So the multiple cube theory kind of does make sense, and I don't know, it gives just, more elements to the story, where it's not just one cube. It's like, oh, guys, we got to get all 5 cubes or all 7 cubes or whatever. I personally like that. It leads to so many other questions. It's like, what does Blast know? Why isn't he telling them, the Hero Association? Was he able to see God when he touched the cube? Right. Why is God locked up?
As one Reddit user pointed out, they say how blasts will only show up if a God-level threat arrives. What if they were talking literally there? And this is all connected, and the God threat that they're talking about is God itself.
Yeah, it's very possible, because, he doesn't verbatim, or Sitch, the guy from the Hero Association, he doesn't verbatim say God-level threat, but he just says he will surely show up when humanity is in danger, or in grave danger, or something like that, which basically implies when there's like a God-level threat. So it's possible that Blast has some kind of inclination of what's going on here. I guess this does represent, to an extent, Pandora's box, right? So he's like, if Pandora's box ever opens, then I guess I got to come out of retirement.
I think there's a good chance, at least maybe I'm hoping, that Blast shows up here like in the next chapter, like very briefly. I don't know if that would derail the series, but they've shown us so much of him in recent chapters, it kind of like would make sense that like maybe he comes by real quick, shuts the portal, and then like dips or something, I think
that'd be wild.
It would be really wild. But I feel like then like Flashy Flash, like Saitama probably wouldn't say anything to anyone else, but like Flashy Flash would, right?
Yeah, Flashy Flash, I assume has to, at least he'd read the Blast nameplate. I don't know if everyone even knows what Blast looks like. Like, that's how like much of like a mysterious thing he is in this world. Like in the data book, it specifically says that none of the S-class heroes have met him, aside from Tatsumaki, which, you'll know because that just happened. And also it happened in the webcomic, but the data book happens, before all of that stuff. But, they pretty much don't even know what he looks like, I guess.
Well, do you think that Amai Mask does? because
Well,
of his
my
little
mask
flesh.
currently does now.
But he's not a S rank, so I guess that still lines up with what it says in the data book.
Yeah, and also, I mean, the data book is supposed to be like like as if the Hero Association is writing it. It's not like the other data books like Naruto or My Hero or something. It's like you're reading it from like you bought it in the One Punch Man world, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like the way that it's written and the way that they speak in it.
Do you think that when Saitama destroys God, everybody's going to lose their powers?
It's a very good possibility that happens. It seems, I mean, there's so much that we don't know, so it's hard to say for sure. But given what My Mask says about the history of the One Punch Man world and the web comic, I think it's like chapter 120, or I think it's 120 or 121 or something, when he says like how monsters weren't always kind of like a thing. They're kind of like relatively new. Well, relatively in like the span of like the last 100 years or so or something like that. And they kind of started to spring up after this like multiple world wars started happening. Either that happened because of God and he is the source of these superhumans, like, you know, the S-class heroes and the monsters, and that it's all connected and that he is the source of it. Even Saitama, like Saitama having the ability to get strong and then remove his limiter, it's very possible that that is a result of God's whatever he did to the world or whatever he represents or whatever he truly is.
It's like cosmic radiation that allows people to make their ambitions like become like fruition. Like to realize their dreams to like a supernatural extent, you know, like Crabman, obviously Saitama, Dark Shine, all those people who wanted something, and through vigilant training and ambition, they got it. I mean, even so, Garo. I mean, Garo wants to become a monster, and he's turning into one.
Exactly. I mean, the way that it's best explained is through Dr. Genus. I think in chapter 88, when he says that monsterification happens through an abnormal cellular reaction by, you know, on one the desires and the rage and, you know, whatever that stuff. Now, why is the abnormal cell reaction happening? Possible it has something to do with God. Also, another thing about Saitama possibly losing his powers, or just everyone losing his powers, is Murata on a live stream said what he thinks the ending would be. He says something along the lines of, and remember, this is just a rough translation. You know, he either said this verbatim or he didn't, but he says if Saitama defeats the god that gave him powers and loses them, that's what he feels the ending will be. But then he also tries to say that, like, oh, this is just my opinion. I'm not spoiling anything. And I'm like, well, dude, if it is your opinion.
Did you just spoil the end of One Punch Man?
You talk to the damn creator. You're boys with him. You know stuff that no one else knows. Now, even if you genuinely believe that you're not spoiling it, it's very possible subconsciously you are. That's like a thing. Like you subconsciously take in some information and you believe it to be an original thought.
Yeah, I think it would be, I mean, I think it's a pretty fitting ending though. Like, say Drive Knight collects all of the cubes, he frees God, and then you have like Blast and Saitama versus God and Drive Knight, and like maybe Blast is fighting Drive Knight, who's been like hiding some power or gets powered up through the power of the cubes. So they're like even, and then like, you know, Saitama's like going back and forth with the God. I mean, think about that sort of apocalyptic ending. It would just be absolutely amazing. And then like a helicopter flies over, you know, like All Might versus All for One, and they're like watching the fight go down, and everybody like realizes that Saitama actually is the #1 hero, but then he defeats God and everybody loses their powers, and then what, you know?
And then it's like, oh, well, you were the strongest, but
for like a minute. I mean, I could see something like that happening, and then maybe he starts training again because he's like, now he's not invincible, and you know, he has to do it the hard way now. And I think, yeah, that'd be a pretty satisfying ending, I think.
I mean, like you said, anything is possible right now, and then for the first time at least in the manga, it truly is. Anything is possible. Like you said, Blast could show up and seal the portal and then dip. I mean, that could happen. It would certainly have a polarizing effect on the community, but I mean, it's possible it could happen.
Yeah, I mean, one thing's for sure, like, dude, Murata knows what fans want. I mean, my God.
In more ways than one.
In more ways than one, bro. The way he draws Fubuki, like...
he drew her too good. He drew her so good that they
So
had
good.
to edit it in the Viz.
Yeah, you know, I love that it starts out with such kind of like an innocent sort of story to follow, but it's definitely got some kind of darker art and sexy stuff going on here. I mean, like fans love it. I mean, he's capturing the attention of like past shonen, like not teenagers, but like people 20s and above. I mean, people just love it. I mean, how could you not?
Exactly. I mean, I have a whole bunch of friends who don't follow, battle manga or whatever, and you just show them One Punch Man, they're instantly on board. I mean, friggin' Bill Burr, he loves it.
Yeah.
And he's the biggest, miser out there. But there's just so much good speculation to it. There's so much just hope for the series. I mean, I don't want to talk crap on Dragon Ball, but it's like every time you get your hopes up, it's kind of just doesn't happen the way that you want it to.
Well, yeah, I we can talk about it real quick. I mean, I feel like that entirely. Like think of all of the theories that people are having and how Murata is just and one are giving us these like sprinkles, but they're like so exciting because they expand on theories and they gives us so much to talk about. In Dragon Ball, it's like, oh, Mirror knows Ultra Instincts. That means he must be an angel, which means he's probably going to sacrifice himself to make Goku get Ultra Instinct in the end. And it's like we're able to predict so many like themes of the entire Moro arc that went on for 2 years just by like one panel. It wasn't like this cookie crumb trail of with a magnifying glass trying to figure things out. It was just like cut and dry. Whereas, Murata is like really making us think and get excited over all the various possibilities. And the thing is, like, it's not drawn yet, so like he could really take this in any direction that he wants to.
Exactly, and I'm glad that the community is just growing and they're behind it because it wasn't always that way.
All right, just want to say thanks to Shonen. Make sure you guys check out his channel and subscribe. He not only talks about One Punch Man, but he talks about My Hero Academia and some other anime as well. Up and coming YouTuber. And Shonen, thanks for stopping by for the video.
Hey, thanks for having me. Anytime you're down to talk about the punch.
I'm always down to talk about the punch.
Yeah.